Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're discussing how to overcome imposter syndrome and multiply your leadership impact. We have a special guest, Flo Labrato, to help us with the discussion. Founder of Olive and Grace Leadership Coaching, Flo will share her insights from her recent Brains magazine article, Multiply Your Leadership Impact with Self-Efficacy. We will leave a link to that article in the show transcript following today's episode. But before we bring Flo on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. Okay, with that, Tim, would you kick us off, please?
Welcome, everybody. And it's fantastic to be back after the short summer break. Amazing to be back with so many people and talking to so many great guests. My name is Tim Hughes, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Adam, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome.
Thank you, Rob. It's lovely to be back after, as Tim said, after the summer break. Feels like a new school year, doesn't it? Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner and co-founder at DLA Ignite. And I'm very excited about getting back in the saddle for this semester.
Excellent. Thank you. Bertrand, welcome.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bertrand Godillot. I am the managing partner of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner here in France and the south of Europe. Very excited to be back as well, especially, and very glad it's Friday.
Amen to that. Excellent. Thank you. And Tracy, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I too am excited to be back and excited that my headphones match Tim's shirt. That's very exciting. I am Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, where we're all about marketing being a revenue engine and not a cost center, because that's dumb. I too am a proud DLA Ignite partner, and I have all of the thoughts on imposter syndrome. So I'm super excited for this conversation.
Excellent. I'm just going to sit back and let you take it from here.
Well,
hear from your
someone's got to bring Flo into the room. That's your job.
This is true. We'll get Flo. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everyone. I'm Rob Durant. I am the founder of Flywheel Results. I too am a proud DLA Ignite partner, and I'm excited for this new season of the Digital Download. We have some tremendous guests lined up for the fall season. And it starts with our first guest. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Flo Labrato. Flo's approach to leadership coaching blends practical experience with a deep understanding of leadership psychology, offering valuable insights for anyone looking to lead more effectively with greater confidence and purpose. Let's bring her on. Flo, good morning and welcome.
Hi,
so
Flo.
happy to be here.
Welcome, Flo.
Hi, everyone.
Flo, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Oh, happy to. I am, my background is interesting. I studied art, I studied psychology, I studied leadership management, organizational development while working many, many years in telecommunications, and thought, how are all of these different things related? And then it dawned on me that I enjoy technology so much, and I still serve as a senior manager in a telecommunications company. But I'm 51% more about people and technology. And I realized, oh, it's coaching. This is my jam. So as a result, I, just started Olive and Grace Leadership Coaching. And what I care about, as you shared, is people leading with integrity and purpose. And I love this work.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. Flo, I want to start with a foundational question. What exactly is self-efficacy, and how does that differ from self-confidence?
Oh, that's a good question, because self-efficacy, efficacy, and confidence are definitely related, but they're not the same. I think of them as cousins. So if you think of like a timeline, confidence is when we are able to look back and see that we have skills, experience, we have been successful in some areas. And by looking back, we can realize that, oh, this means that I can be confident, I can be sure that in the future I can do the same thing again. So if I can bench press so many pounds in the past, then I have reason to be sure that I can do it again in the future. So that's rear looking, which is great. Confidence is wonderful. And at times everyone doubts, but confidence is definitely helpful. However, self-efficacy is forward thinking. Self-efficacy is more related to positive psychology, the study of human flourishing. So self-efficacy doesn't only look at the past, but it is an optimistic outlook that we can use whatever skills or intuition or experience we have and have self-assurance in our capacity to learn to also be successful in the future, even if we don't have the firm evidence that confidence provides us.
So talk to us then a little bit about imposter syndrome. That seems the complete opposite.
Complete opposite. And I want to start with that. Imposter syndrome, I believe, happens at some point to probably 99% of people. I can think of a few exceptions, maybe with a personality disorder here or there, where imposter syndrome is a non-issue. But when we think about think of individuals, and this may have happened to anyone who's here on listening or any of us, right? That we have studied, we have prepared, we have experience. Maybe we've even been successful in the past, maybe even high achieving, and still question, wait, did I really do that? Do I really have those skills? Can I really do this again? And even though evidence tells us that we are equipped and skilled and able, we still question. And so that gap right there between what we believe that we're supposed to do and what we think we cannot do is imposter syndrome. So it's like walking around, sitting in a room and thinking, oh my goodness, people might think I'm a fraud, or people probably think I'm more skilled than I am. That right there makes us feel like we're cosplaying as someone who is able to do the job.
I love how you put that, cosplaying.
Isn't that a basic human trait, if you like? Like, actually, I'm not a very nice person, and people only think I'm nice because they don't really know who I am, kind of thing. And most people feel that at some point and in some situations. And I know that Tim and I have delivered hundreds of seminars and keynotes and training sessions, and both of us, every time before we get up on stage, whether that's a physical stage or a virtual stage, you feel butterflies and you think, oh God, I know I've done this, exactly this 50 times, but maybe this time it's all going to go wrong. Maybe the audience won't like it. Maybe, and isn't that part of the kind of the nerves that drive you to do your best? So isn't that a good thing rather than a bad thing?
Absolutely. And Adam Grant has talked a lot about this, especially in his last book, Hidden Potential, about how imposter syndrome itself is not terrible. It's not a terrible thing. We experience it. I cannot imagine speaking in front of a bunch of people and not feeling my knees, shake a little bit. Even preparing for this, I thought this week, man, I'm going on the digital download to talk about imposter syndrome, and I'm experiencing imposter syndrome about doing this. Talk about meta imposter syndrome, right? But it is healthy to have a little bit of grounded confidence, meaning that we're prepared with the skills that we have and the experience, and we've done this before, right? But also be grounded in that we're not perfect, and there may be room for mistakes or missteps. And that is normal. That is perfectly normal, because if not, we might get comfortable and not continue to grow. And then we might shift into survival mode instead of thriving. However, imposter syndrome can become detrimental. It can become really painful when there is a significantly gap, right? And then what leaves us is wondering, oh my gosh, what if one day they discover that they hired the wrong person? Or what if this is the day that I go to deliver a keynote and I trip? And once it becomes psychologically detrimental, then that not only impacts our self-efficacy, it impacts our self-confidence, and it also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in that it impacts our ability to perform. Does that make sense?
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to jump in with, I have like all of the thoughts. Flo knows me, so it's fine. She was probably prepared for this. Okay, so I'm all about authenticity, and I have
Yes.
I have a theory about the concept of imposter syndrome, which I see as different than self-doubt. So what I'm hearing right now is a lot of similarities between imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And from an authenticity point of view, I'm agreeing with all we're saying. I believe everyone will experience self-doubt. We're going to go to a new managerial position. We've never been a manager before. We're probably going to doubt that we can be successful at that. I think self-doubt is very normal. I think we've, like, as a society, mangled this concept of self-doubt into imposter syndrome, and it makes me experience as if you're trying to be someone else, aka you are being an imposter, then you will experience imposter syndrome, because you're not trying to be yourself. You're trying to be something else you think you should be. And I'd love to hear Flo. Like, I experience the difference between those things. I have self-doubt because I'm not sure that I can do ABC. I experience imposter syndrome because I'm trying to be someone else. I'm trying to do that how someone else would do it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I am so glad that you touched on that, because one of the very first strategy that I talk about in the article to build that self-efficacy is to develop your own compass. And what I mean by your compass is get really clear about the things that are important to you. I need to be clear about the things that are important to me and who I am as a person. And what I combine as the compass is, I think of three elements. One is understanding, what are your core values? What is most important to you as a human being? Not as a parent, as a business professional, as a leader, as a soccer coach, as a friend, whatever it is, transcending all areas of your life. What is most important to you as a human? What is most important to me? So that's your core values. And the second thing is to be aware of, when it comes to work, what do I need from work? What are the work values that are most important to me? And that changes depending on the different stages in life, right? I'm going to date myself here. Me, 25 years ago, I was probably more motivated by money because I suddenly had a mortgage and, it doesn't pay itself. And today I'm more motivated by purpose and work-life harmony. And so it's important to know what our values are and our work values. And the third thing is to know what are our strengths. What am I good at? So that I can know what are the talents that I have that I can bring. And then combining those three, my core values, my work values, and my strengths serves as a compass and a place for grounded confidence, for authenticity. If not, then if I am cosplaying to think, oh, this person values competition and I don't, but competition is rewarded, so let me act as if I value competition, then I'm always going to feel like an imposter because I'm literally cosplaying someone else. You are so on point.
Well, and I think that's the interesting thing about it. And there's a little bit of, not a little bit, probably a lot of self-awareness that goes into the capacity to say, like, I'm showing up, waving at Andrew because this is what we do, that I'm showing up as myself, or I'm showing up. You gave a great example of valuing competition when I don't value competition, and being able to realize that, like, wow, that's not my value. I'm doing that because I think that will be rewarded here. But this is also probably one of the reasons why I'm feeling like an imposter, because I am.
Absolutely.
And not in a bad way, but it's just like, it's not being yourself.
Exactly. And I think there are multiple factors that can influence that, right? One, it could be, frankly, that I don't have the skills to do what I need to do. Maybe I don't quite have the competence. And at that point, that could be an element of imposter syndrome if someone oversells themselves. Let's set that aside, right? That's a possibility. It could also be, though, that there is almost this unstated common understanding of what this shared understanding of a mental prototype of what the person is supposed to look and be and sound like in that job, right? So, and if I don't fit that, I might feel like I'm an imposter because I'm trying to approximate that prototype, even though that prototype is not authentically me. And furthermore, by using so much cognitive and emotional energy on trying to approximate that prototype, which doesn't come naturally to me, I therefore have less emotional and cognitive energy to be effective at whatever it is that I'm supposed to do. And again, it becomes a self-fulfilling spiral.
I love how you talk about that. It reminds me of why I don't like the term personal brand and I prefer personality. I'm not
Mm.
trying to fit a prototype. I'm just trying to be me. And it's a lot easier to be me than the best approximation of perfect me.
That's a word. That is a word. And I do talk about personal brand. I actually just did a talk at an organization last week around career development and touched on personal brand. And I think there is a really big difference between, I mean, when we define personal brand is I want to show the world who I am versus I want to become an approximation of what I think everyone else wants me to be so that I can be
Which is what a lot
successful.
of personal brand coaches want to
Has
sell you.
become. Mhm,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
That's exhausting. That is exhausting. So like all of these things, there are those social impacts, the shared understanding and the culture in the group. And you can feel it when you walk in the room, whether you feel there is who is the person who is the most senior or the most leader in the room, or who has the most expertise. And we do have a biological social need to be part of the in group, right? But when that comes at the expense of our own authenticity, then it's harder to have that self-efficacy. It's harder to feel that we can be successful in the future because we're spending so much energy being someone else. And it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well.
So just Flo, how much of this is actually preventing people to change or to embrace new opportunities or new areas, and how can we make them feel safe in doing this somehow? Is there a role? Because I understand there is a role. There's part of that is about who you are and not trying to be somebody else. But how much can you, apart from getting this confidence, uh, what can the others do to help you get there, basically?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we had like a crystal ball that we can see into the future and see, oh, can I do that? Okay, then I'll go ahead and do that. But there is a gap, right, between a leap of faith that we need to take between what am I good at? What can I do? What do I need to do? And getting there. And that space of discomfort is basically unavoidable. We can stay comfortable, right? And avoid all kinds of, discomfort and just continue to do the things that we are 100% confident we're good at, but then we won't be able to grow. However, everyone around us can also help make it okay. Make it okay to make mistakes. Make it okay to goof and not make it so personally costly. And that will allow people to step out and practice that self-efficacy.
I want to invite the audience to contribute some questions. We have Andrew in the audience. First, let's all wave. Good morning, Andrew.
Yeah.
Good morning, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Well, Andrew asks a great question. Andrew Slesser asks, why is it we feel more like an imposter with the more experience we gain?
Good question.
That is a really good question, and I think that popular psychology, we tend to think of imposter syndrome is when we feel only when we feel less confident or when we experience doubt, right? But there is a lot of evidence that high achievers, and the more we progress and grow and achieve our goals, that imposter syndrome doesn't go away, because there's still that sense of, we tend to question, did I really earn this? Did I really achieve this? Did I really complete this? And as a result, all of that self-doubt just continues to grow as we continue to grow our skill sets. So yeah, sometimes the more experience we gain, the more we feel like an imposter. I joke around about cosplaying as an adult because I sometimes I don't know. There's so many things going on. Like, how do I hold it all together, right? But I'm obviously a functioning, successful adult. But I still have my moments when I experience that doubt and I question: am I really supposed to be this responsible? Yes, I am, and I already am, and that's okay. But it's okay to have those moments of doubt. But it does help, to be surrounded by people that can remind us in those moments that we're doing a good job, that yes, we earned and achieved our accomplishments.
Let's turn our focus to leadership. You mentioned Compass. What other strategies can leaders use to overcome imposter syndrome and to build more self-efficacy?
Oh man, this is a tough one because if we look at research and even just our professional experience over the last, say from 5 years ago to maybe the mid 80s, the expectation is that leadership came with presence. That when a leader walks in the room, everyone knows who the leader is. And many of us probably professionally grew up seeing hierarchical organizations with like 10, 12 layers, in which the higher someone is in the organization, the more leadership presence that they have, right? But there is a shift in values. And what research is showing is that, and Tracy, you're going to love this, is that even more important than executive presence or that leadership presence or the I'm in charge presence, what people want is authenticity. They want that more than ever. So what does that mean? That tells us that to be effective leaders, whether it is an emerging leader without direct reports yet, or a frontline manager or an executive leader, that to be an effective leader, you have to have, yes, that confidence and awareness of achievements and skills and experience and competence. Also that self-efficacy, that positive forward-looking perspective that, yes, I can lead effectively. My team can innovate. I can grow. I can show up. But also that authenticity to even admit the times like, hey, you know what? Sometimes I question myself, and that's okay. And people will value that and trust authentic leadership in that way a lot more than the persona that used to be expected of, like, I know everything. I have all the answers. So look at me because I'm the boss.
We have another great question from the audience. I want to bring that up. I'm going to butcher it, and I apologize in advance. Amrit Aujla asks, what is the best way to prepare for a public speaking moment?
Great question.
I actually want to defer to everyone else here first on this one.
I would say it depends on who you are, because I'm a super useful answer. Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing. There's lots of information that you can find on the internet about how to prepare for public speaking. And personally, I've been a Toastmaster, right? So that was something that I did. I thought that was very helpful from a public speaking confidence building perspective. But even within like the Toastmasters program, every different speaker had a different way of preparing for speaking. Some people like to rehearse. Personally, I hate that. I hate feeling like I have to follow a script, because then I get more concerned about the script than actually connecting with the audience and things like that. But that's not the right thing for all people. So my advice would be to like try on some advice, like see what other people do, try it on for yourself. Maybe it works for you. Awesome. If it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean that you're a bad public speaker or you need to change something about yourself in order to make that advice work for you. It just means that something else will work for you. Anyway, that's my point of view.
I would say control the controllable.
Yeah.
You know what you know. Be confident in that and let a lot of the other things go. Early on, I used to try and memorize what I was going to say. That did not allow for my personal style, which is, well, casual is a polite way of describing my style. Definitely off the cuff. So lean into your style. If memorizing something and getting it perfect is your style, well, then yes, do that. But don't do that if that's not authentic to you.
You have to rehearse. So
Yes.
it doesn't mean you have to learn a script, but you have to rehearse. My guitar teacher said you need to rehearse every part of the performance, including the performance. So Tracy going to Toastmasters is brilliant. Nothing terrifies you more than the first time you stand up on stage to speak to people. So talk to a safe audience, talk to your team at work, talk to your partner, talk to your family, talk to anyone that will listen to you to give you experience of speaking to people within the audience. And yeah, you need the spontaneity. So you don't learn the words, but you must practice what you're doing. And you need to think about your hand gestures and where you're standing on the stage, because all of that can paint a picture. But when you get it right, it's great because you can go up there and enjoy the moment. And I think that the other thing is that your terror of standing up on stage, so for many people it is terror, your terror of standing up on stage reaches a crescendo just before you begin to talk. And taking a couple of deep breaths helps just to take the edge off that, so you can then give of your best. And at the end of the day, the thing to remember is that the audience do not want you to fail. Even though you think they're standing there with daggers ready to jump onto the stage, they want you to succeed. They want you to do a good job because they want to be entertained.
Yeah,
that's a very fair point, Adam. But I'll you know, my 2 cents on this is because you tend to be a bit how can I say that? Not really stressed, but there's a bit of adrenaline going on before you get on stage. And to get things started properly, I confess I would probably have in mind my first 2 or 3 sentences. Rehearsal is part of is definitely what you're talking about, but also, you know, just pitching it also because I'm not English native, so that when I do that in English, you know, that requires me to have the right words, or at least the ones I want to express. So, my 2 cents. And breathing and all the stuff, I fully agree.
Don't forget to breathe.
Yes, don't forget to breathe.
Breathing is good.
Rob.
I think one of the things that I was thinking with like kind of all of these things, from public speaking to the leadership and imposter syndrome, I think a lot of the time, and with Andrew's question too, about how the more experience we gain, the more we might doubt ourselves, even though we have more evidence. Is this because we're spending too much time not in the present? Because I feel like personally, if I look at my most effective leadership moments, it's when I'm just in the present with my team, being with them, solving problems. I'm not worrying about what's going to happen in the future. I'm not worried about what happened in the past. We're just here together doing stuff. And I feel like that's my most effective. But I also feel like when we're having anxiety or imposter syndrome or self-doubt or any of these other things, it's because we've taken ourselves out of the present moment into the past or into the future. So is that also part of the journey, is to explore how much time we're spending not in the present moment?
I think that's an excellent point that you bring up. And I want us to think about embodiment. And how important this also ties back to the question about public speaking. Nerves take over, whether it is, you know, nerves before, you know, delivering a keynote or even an event like this, or nerves about pitching something in a meeting when we know that it may be controversial. Whatever it is, there may be nerves. It could also be a simple conversation, a simple coaching conversation that may feel like we're not completely present, because we're pretending to be time travelers, as if we can go in the past and fix what happened, or go into the future and prefix what might go wrong. And having that mindfulness and embodying each moment makes a difference. And here's what I mean by embodiment. It is being very aware not only of our emotions, not only of our racing thoughts that are trying to time travel, but also being grounded in our bodies. And that focusing on our physical senses can help us immensely to practice being present, so that we can have those impactful moments, so that we can almost slow down time, right? So that our emotions don't hijack us and our critical thoughts don't take over, but we can wholly, as leaders and individuals, emotionally, mentally, and physically be present. And as a result, not only can we be more present and have a greater impact in the moment, but we're not wasting energy thinking about the future or the past or what I'm supposed to be like, and I could just be myself in this moment. And that allows a lot more emotional and physical and mental reserves available to engage meaningfully with people, which also means we're less likely to make errors that we might regret in the future because we're fully present. I think you nailed it, Tracy.
Flo, I've reported to leaders who must have been dealing with imposter syndrome because, frankly, they were imposters. And I've dealt with leaders that were fantastic. How do you coach a leader towards that authenticity? How do you help them improve that self-efficacy?
Oh man, it's easy, but it is hard. Because it is easy because the answer is know yourself, figure out what's important to you, and lead from that position instead of pretending to be someone else. The hard part is slowing down enough to self-evaluate and really get to know ourselves. And that's really hard because we have the world moves very quickly, things are constantly changing, we have to continuously adapt. And as a result, there's like a mix up between adapting to the situation or adapting who we are as a person. And if I can effectively adapt as a leader without necessarily changing who I am or trying to pretend that I can change who I am at my core, I can change my skills, I can gain new experiences, I can learn to engage differently in the world. But my values are my values, and I need to honor those. And so working with someone in that situation, oftentimes we spend a lot of time on that self-discovery, helping to a leader to extricate what their personal values and skills or strengths are from their identity in a specific profession or even their identity in a specific organization. Because if the cheese moves, it doesn't mean that the leader is now devoid of the skills, experience, their values. They're still theirs. They possess those, right? So getting really grounded in that compass allows them to then understand themselves and lead accordingly, to be able to invite perspectives, to encourage and inspire others, and collectively, bring people together to generate new ideas, creativity, innovate, problem solve, perform without compromising themselves. Because when that compromise happens, there's less emotional reserve to be an emotionally intelligent or resilient leader.
Now, I've worked with coaches. They've helped me assess when I should be advocating and when I maybe shouldn't. You mentioned slowing down. Is that something that somebody can do on their own, or is it really only something that they can work through with a coach?
This is definitely something that someone can do on their own, hands down. Because stretching what might feel like a millisecond into a second or two before responding gives us enough time to slow down our nervous system and think more critically. And that's someone that anyone can do on their own. However, I do recommend working with a coach when a problem continues to persist and we operate in survival mode instead of thriving. And that is the difference. When a problem becomes so distressful that it's impacting performance or is impacting their team, frankly, is impacting the organization's survivability as a whole, I definitely encourage working with a coach, because at that point, we're not only dealing with the negative effects that the leader experiences, but potentially impacting many, many more people. So to accelerate that growth, absolutely work with a coach. But also, this is something we can do on our own, creating space. We think like when a problem comes or a question comes and we have to immediately have an answer. Most of the time, 2 seconds, a 2-second pause to ground ourselves, to take that deep breath, to connect with our bodies, and then be able to tell our emotions, thank you for being here, feelings, but you're a data point, you're not everything. Then that allows us to have the opportunity to create better answers, or even say, you know what, let me think about that. Let me get back with you, instead of being so quick to the draw and then regretting what we say.
Well, and I would say too, I mean, I've done a lot of work in authenticity, and I'm like celebrating my 10-year anniversary of starting my mindset journey. Like, I started doing mindset work 10 years ago, and like my life today is completely different than my life 10 years ago, which I'm very excited about. But I was on a podcast recently, and the interviewer asked me, how do I know my values, right? How do I know what's my thing, what makes me unique, so that I can like focus on that and build on that? And I do think one of the most interesting things about that, and I've heard it called Johari's blind window. I usually just call it like what we don't know about ourselves. But other people have experiences of us that we don't have of us. And so this is one of the reasons why I think coaching has become so prominent, is that especially a coach who's looking for like flow, you're looking for leadership potential in a person. So you will likely see leadership potential in a person, even if they don't see it in themselves. And then a coach can give you that something to base things on. And so one of the things I quite often tell people is like, pay attention to what other people are saying about you that you like. Right? And then people might be saying stuff about you that you don't like. But the example I always give is people often tell me I'm refreshing. And I don't prompt them with that word. This is just a word that people use for me. And every time I hear it, I'm like, yes, because this is what I'm about, giving people new perspectives and things like that. So I like to be refreshing. And so when you like hear something someone says about you and it feels really meaningful for you, that's a window into your values, who you are as a person. And so these are the types of things that we can then take into our leadership environments, our environments with our friends and loved ones, and on shows like this, right? To just say like, oh, people use this word for me. That's really meaningful. So that's probably connected to a set of values or my compass. And give yourself a chance, even if you don't create the time to explore that more deeply, create the moment to, like, my friend Amisha says, take it to the bank. Right? Like, that someone said that about me. That's meaningful for me. Let it soak in for a moment, because then it gives you that something you can build on.
I think I love that exercise. That one is such a good one, because it allows us to create a little bit of distance, like step out of ourselves and assess ourselves. One of the reasons that coaching and even working with mentors, which are totally different things, I recommend both, is helpful, is because we make meaning through the use of language. And yes, we can think and use words in our heads. But when we have dialogue with another person, we're able to ask questions, interrogate what we say, what they say, compare notes. And through that dialogue, we are able to determine the meaning, or to make meaning out of what we see. One of my favorite exercises is, and I use this, the coaching approach that I use is coactive coaching. It is about the balance of the person being and the person doing what they need to do to move forward. And one of my favorite exercises that from coactive is a peak moment. So I've had a coach walk me through this exercise, and I immediately loved it. I'm like, I'm using this too. And that is when we ask someone to describe a peak moment, a time in their life when everything felt right in the world. And it could have been a big milestone at work, or a tender moment with family, whatever it is, right? And then spend some time with that moment to mine that moment and understand who was there, What was important about that moment? How did you feel? And listening someone describe that moment and watching someone's face light up and their shoulders relax gives us indication of what their values might be. And so as then I can say, hey, it sounds what I'm hearing there and what you're describing is a value of X. How does that sound to you? And sometimes a person might say, oh, you know what, that's not quite it, but I think it's more this. And through that dialogue, we can discover that. And then as an authentic leader, that leader can be armed with their values to guide their decisions, to be transparent in how they show up for their people, to be transparent in how they do business with stakeholders. And then as a result, they don't have to spend time being someone else. They can be themselves, which, let's be real, when there's authentic leadership, people are more likely going to follow. Without authentic leadership, it is really hard to get the hearts and minds of people committed to whatever the mission is.
Let's build on that for a moment. Let's talk about leadership impact. How can leaders use self-efficacy to inspire and motivate their teams? How can they help their teams be more confident?
Oh, that is so good. We've talked about the shadow of the leader, right? A leader showing up in a way that they're confident in their skills, their competencies, their experience, and they also have a positive disposition about the future and their ability to deliver, not perfectly, but forward movement, right? That will inspire other people to also, one, be confident in their own skills and also have a positive disposition about their own performance. And I love seeing this played out collectively. I with my own team, this is my favorite part. With my own team, we might realize, hey, we're really good at these things. We have a track record of doing awesome work in this area, and in the future, we need to move in this new area. Do we believe that we can do that? We might, experience a little bit of doubt and need additional resources and gain experience throughout the process, but with a positive disposition that we can aim in that direction and we're going to aim higher than if we stay still where we are now. That inspires people. I'd also add a couple of more things that are really important with teams is that, one, make it okay to make mistakes. And that is something that we can model to say, hey, you know what? I goofed. I messed up here. Not only to make amends if someone was wronged or in any way, but also as a learning opportunity so that everyone can collectively learn. And that makes it easier. It lowers the risk required for team members to say, I don't have the skills, or I'm not confident in this area, or I messed up in this area. Can you help me? So that's one thing. And the second thing is to celebrate the wins. Celebrate the wins, whether they're big or they're small, or it's a milestone, or maybe, we have milestones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the win was like milestone 2C. Celebrate it, like acknowledge it, celebrate it. And sometimes we might miss a milestone because of something that didn't go as planned. Celebrate that as well when there's learning. And that energy combined collectively will inspire and encourage people to go out and go self-lead and do things, and then have things so that they can look back on for confidence and further begetting the self-efficacy and that positive outlook for the future.
Flo, I have a question about the ability to use these skills from the middle, because I'm feeling like there is a degree of psychological safety within an organization that needs to exist for a leader to be able to show up like this. And if the culture of the organization is more, I was speaking recently with my sister, and she was talking about an organization she worked in, and she looked at all the upper management and she was like, I would never want to be like that. I will do me, but you were never going to go anywhere in that organization unless you led with red. And I can't remember what personality assessment that is, but anyway, so is it possible to create a cultural shift from the middle with these skills, or is it something that you might realize hey, I'm not in alignment with this organization and I have to go find something that matches me better?
Yes and yes. So yes, it is possible to create that culture from the middle anywhere really in the organization. It may not shift the entire culture of the organization, but it might shift the microculture in the immediate. So when we look into the way that organizations operate and the different layers of organizational development, so maybe there's a specific team that is in a tough situation and they can't shift the culture of the entire organization, the entire company. However, that team or that set of teams within that function or vertical can create and foster that psychological safety so that they can perform. And then what happens is that it's not that it solves the bigger issues of the organization, but the benefits, the cohesiveness of the microculture might become strong enough to offset the negative impacts of the bigger culture, and positively might also encourage, you know what I mean? It might encourage others to also adapt change. But also if someone is struggling and in survival mode for an extended period of time in an organization, changing organizations might be the right answer.
What about the organization that's constantly in survival mode? You don't answer that.
Well, and I think, like, I remember when we did the episode with Sarah Melby, and I was explaining how I had a scenario as a leader where I felt like I had done a really good job of creating this island paradise for my team. And that was how they got to come to work every day. But I had to run around these like tall castle walls that were around this island, defending it from dragons. And so like that was my reality as the leader. And while I felt very good about what I had created for the team, my experience of the leader was still very much in that like defense protect mode. And now it's interesting to think about that now because I have different skills from a being myself perspective, and I could probably do something different now if I was brought back into the same scenario. But I think that is still common for leaders, is that we believe in us creating this microcosm, as you said, but then somehow we are not even like, it hasn't gotten to the point where we are benefiting from that. It's like we're caught in between, and it's almost like now there's like a greater in between a rock and a hard place. And I think it leads a lot of leaders to exit organizations. So for leaders who might feel like they are in that scenario, like they have the skills to create that space, but that they are not yet participating in that space, do you have any advice for leaders in that scenario?
Yes. And as you described that, I envision like a moat, like the leader being the moat, protecting the team.
Yes, but there's also sharks in the moat. And so you have to avoid sharks.
And so you're protecting, avoiding the sharks, fighting dragons in the other castle. It's a lot. And so there are three things that come to mind. Is that one, we got to trust our people. Our people are resilient, they're creative, they're resourceful, and maybe need less protection. And I've been there where I spent myself thinking I needed to protect my team from an incredible amount of change. This is many years ago. And I was exhausted, right? So maybe we also trust other people's resourcefulness and adaptability and help them to develop the adaptability to manage in difficult situations. I think also for the leader and every single person in an organization, it's important to figure out how much overlap is there in the Venn diagram of one's personal values and what they need from work and the organization. And it may not be 100% match, but if the Venn diagram barely has overlap, then it may not be a good, match. That organization may not be a good match for the leader. Or it may be that the leader doesn't quite understand themselves, or the organization doesn't quite understand itself. And we can give it a little bit more time to unfold. But if it gets to the point of burnout and it's impacting health, then something has to change. And if the organization is not going to change, then the leader may want to look at a change. Protect the mental health.
How can I assess my imposter syndrome or level of self-efficacy? How do I know where I stand right now?
Oh, that is a good question. There are multiple assessments out there on the internet streets, and many are not scientifically valid nor reliable. I lean toward a more organic approach. I encourage everyone. This is not a new idea, but I encourage everyone to have a personal development board of directors, like people that pour into you, that will support you, challenge you, give you feedback, advocate for you. And the individual, the leader, the business professional, whoever it is the chairman of their board of directors, but enlist other people, right? And that may be mentors, it may be other leaders, their sponsor, champions, an executive coach, whoever it is, that can help them in those moments to understand where they are, and even catalog the skills, experience, competencies that they have, right? And also share some of that courage. Sometimes you got to borrow that courage, sometimes you got to borrow and need that reminder from someone who knows you really well, that that might encourage you to remember that you can try, that you can do things, that you can develop that self-efficacy, because it is the way that the world is changing so rapidly is going to make us question at times what we can do, because what worked 6 months ago may not work 6 months from now. And as a result, we need to be grounded. And part of that grounding can be people to reflect and pour into us and challenge us as needed to grow, not only holding on to our confidence, but to develop our self-efficacy.
Just a quick question, because I think we didn't talk about the elephant in the room here. Is there a gender specific syndrome?
Oh, yes. Tracy and I had this conversation. And this goes back to the same point, that if there is a almost like common prototype of what someone is supposed to look like in a specific role or place in the organization, and in many industries, that prototype is male. And as a result, if a woman is constantly evaluated against a standard, a prototype that is not, if it's not me, I might experience that sense of I am not measuring up to what other people want, or I'm not going to be welcomed here. And so there is a degree that some percentage of imposter syndrome is not just based on the individual, but the social context in which that individual is moving and operating. And that goes back, like if we create supportive places in which we lower the sense of risk required to step out, where we constantly challenge what our perceptions, our prototypes are, then that allows more people to step in authentically instead of trying to do their best to approximate whatever the prototype of the leader is supposed to be.
Thank
I
you
actually did
so
a
much
workshop.
for the answer, Flo.
I actually did a workshop quite a while ago on authentic leadership, and we did this visualization exercise where people had to visualize the ideal leader, and then assess what was the gap, right, between your picture of an ideal leader and who you are, because that was, if you're trying to fill that gap instead of be yourself, then this is where your energy goes. But I think a lot of times too, we have a societal pattern that has said predominantly it has been white males who have been in leadership roles. And I think there's also an opportunity for us to chat, like, yes, that's the back looking. But if we are focusing on our forward motion towards efficacy, then is this about that? Can we create space for our version of leadership? And maybe the reason why we're all here having this conversation is because the world needs this kind of leadership, not that kind of leader. And maybe in the past it needed that kind of leadership, and that's fine. But if we're looking forward, can we create more space for the leaders of the future? And I think there's lots of opportunity there.
Excellent, thanks.
Flo, this has been great. Where can people learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
Oh, so I am on LinkedIn a lot. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Flo Labrado, MSML. But if you plug in Flo Labrado, you're probably not going to find another one. Flo Labrado on LinkedIn, also at flo@oliveandgraceleadership.com for email, and my website, Olive and Grace Leadership. I am constantly on LinkedIn. I love connecting. This is how I met Tracy and many of you. But please come talk. I love connecting and meeting new people.
Excellent. Thank you. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of our panelists, Flo, and to our audience, thank you all. And we will
Thank you,
see you
Flo.
next time
Thank you very much.
on the Digital Download.